Black CEO tests his own store in disguise. And what happens will shock you. Malik Thompson had built an empire from scratch. From a small kiosk in Atlanta to a nationwide chain of high-end retail stores, his name carried weight in boardrooms and on Wall Street. But Malik knew a brand's reputation lived or died on the sales floor, in the way customers were treated when no one was watching. That's why, on a crisp Saturday morning, he left his tailored suits in the closet and pulled on a faded hoodie, worn jeans, and scuffed sneakers. No watch, no designer belt. He even drove his decade-old sedan instead of his usual sleek black coupe. Today, he wasn't Mr. Thompson, CEO. He was just another guy walking into one of his own stores. The store's glass doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and the familiar scent of leather goods and polished wood greeted him. Sunlight streamed through the wide front windows, glinting off displays of luxury handbags and handcrafted accessories. At the far counter, a young employee leaned lazily against the register, scrolling through his phone. His name tag read Eric. Eric looked up, gave Malik a once-over, and immediately looked back down at his screen. No greeting. No "can I help you?" Just an almost imperceptible sigh, as if Malik's presence was already a burden. Malik wandered to a display case, running his fingers over a wallet stitched from fine Italian leather. The price tag, $1, $200, was discreetly tucked inside. "Nice craftsmanship," Malik said aloud, glancing toward Eric. Eric didn't move from behind the counter. "Those are expensive," he called out flatly. "Might want to check the clearance rack in the back if you're looking for something cheaper." The words hung in the air like a slap. Malik just smiled faintly, his eyes unreadable. He'd come for the truth, and it was already revealing itself. Malik kept his hands in his pockets and strolled further into the store, his gaze sweeping over the displays. Each shelf was arranged with care, handbags on brushed steel stands, silk scarves cascading like waterfalls from custom hooks. He knew the meticulous design because he had approved it himself months ago. Eric finally put down his phone, but not to greet Malik. Instead, he walked past him toward another display, adjusting a price tag without making eye contact. "I was actually looking for a gift," Malik said, his tone casual but deliberate. Eric's head turned just enough to meet his eyes, briefly, dismissively. "You'll want something in your price range then," he said, nodding toward a corner where a modest selection of lower-tier items sat under dimmer lights. Malik tilted his head slightly. "And how would you know my price range?" Eric shrugged, smirking faintly. "Call it experience. People who can actually afford what's in here don't usually come dressed like that." His eyes flicked down to Malik's hoodie and sneakers. Malik gave a small chuckle, as if the comment hadn't cut deeper than Eric realized. "Interesting," he murmured. Just then, a well-dressed couple entered the store. Eric's entire demeanor shifted, straightened posture, bright smile, and almost rehearsed warmth. "Welcome in. Can I help you find anything today?" he called, moving quickly toward them. Malik watched the transformation, the sudden burst of customer service that had been denied to him moments ago. He felt no rush of anger, only the quiet confirmation that his test was far from over. While Eric fawned over the couple, offering to bring them champagne, gesturing toward the newest arrivals, Malik drifted toward the far end of the store. He lingered near the flagship display, a limited edition leather briefcase, one of only 50 in the country. Malik had commissioned its design personally, down to the embossed stitching on the handles. He ran his hand along the smooth grain, taking his time. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Eric watching him again, the polite smile gone. The glance wasn't just casual, it was evaluative, measuring Malik not as a customer, but as someone out of place. "You're not supposed to handle that without assistance," Eric called over, his tone firm but tinged with something else. Malik turned toward him, eyebrow raised. "It's on display." "Yeah, but it's not really for browsing," Eric said, stepping closer as if to usher Malik away. "That's a collector's piece. I can show you some of our more affordable options if I'm what?" Malik asked softly, his eyes locked on Eric's. Eric hesitated for the briefest moment before finishing, "More budget-conscious." Malik let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then he simply placed the briefcase back on its stand, nodded once, and stepped aside. He could feel the shift in the room, the couple whispering to each other, Eric pretending nothing had happened. Yet every detail was being filed away in Malik's mind, piece by piece. The real conversation, he knew, was still coming. Malik wandered back toward the front counter, where Eric had returned after escorting the couple to a private seating area. The employee's earlier politeness had completely evaporated again. "Find anything in your range?" Eric asked, his voice carrying a thin veneer of humor. Malik studied him for a moment before answering. "I think I'd like to speak to the owner." Eric snorted softly, as if Malik had just suggested meeting a celebrity. "Yeah, the owner doesn't just drop in for random chats. He's busy. You'd have to schedule something, assuming it's about a purchase." "It is," Malik said simply. "Well," Eric replied, "you can leave your name and number. I'll pass it along." He said the last part without conviction, already glancing back at his phone. Malik leaned slightly over the counter, his voice calm but unwavering. "Or, you could let them know I'm here right now." Eric smirked. "Trust me, they're not coming in for you." Malik reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and began scrolling. "Guess we'll see," he said. Within seconds, he had someone on the line. "Yeah, it's Malik. I'm at the downtown store. Bring the regional manager with you." His tone was measured, but the quiet authority in it made Eric glance up, frowning in confusion. Malik ended the call and slipped the phone back into his hoodie pocket. "They'll be here soon," he said matter-of-factly. For the first time all morning, Eric's smirk faded. The store settled into an uneasy quiet. Eric busied himself behind the counter, though his movements were stiff, glancing occasionally toward Malik as if trying to place him. Malik, for his part, stood calmly near the center of the showroom, his hands tucked in his hoodie pocket, studying the displays as though nothing were out of the ordinary. But inside, he was timing everything, watching how the tension began to ripple outward. It took less than 10 minutes for the glass doors to open again. In walked a sharply dressed man in a tailored navy suit, followed by a woman in a cream blazer holding a leather portfolio. The air in the room shifted instantly. "Mr. Thompson," the man said warmly, striding forward with an outstretched hand. "Always an honor to see you. You could have told me you were stopping by." Eric froze mid-step, eyes flicking between the suited man and Malik. Malik shook the manager's hand. "Didn't want a performance. I wanted to see the place as it really runs." The woman in the cream blazer, regional manager, looked around the store, her eyes already scanning the staff. "Everything okay here?" she asked carefully. Malik's gaze slid to Eric, who was now standing awkwardly behind the counter, shoulders tense. "Depends," Malik said evenly. "Some of the service I've received today raises questions." Eric's face drained of color. The regional manager's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the weight behind Malik's words. "Questions about what exactly?" she asked. Malik turned fully toward Eric, his voice calm, but carrying across the entire store. "About how customers are treated here. How assumptions are made the moment someone walks through that door." Eric opened his mouth, then closed it again. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I didn't know who you were," he stammered. Malik's expression didn't change. "You didn't have to know who I was. You just had to know I was a customer." The silence that followed was sharp, almost brittle. The suited store manager shifted uncomfortably, but Malik wasn't finished. "When I walked in, I got no greeting, no offer of help. I was pointed toward clearance, told things might be out of my range, and treated like I was wasting your time. Meanwhile, the moment someone dressed differently came in, they got champagne and personal attention." Eric's face was flushed now, his jaw tightening. "It's not like that," he said quickly. You were just showing me exactly what I needed to see." Malik cut in, his voice low but edged with steel. "And you've shown everyone here what kind of culture can take root if no one's watching." The regional manager's pen scratched something quickly in her notebook. Malik let the silence settle, every eye in the store fixed on him. Then he turned to the regional manager without breaking his gaze on Eric. "This isn't just about one rude moment," Malik said. "It's about the message it sends to every customer who doesn't fit someone's narrow picture of what wealth looks like. That ends today." Eric shifted on his feet, his voice suddenly small. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, Malik replied, his tone calm but final. And I'm not here to debate it. I'm here to make a decision. He faced the regional manager fully. As of this moment, Eric is no longer employed here. Terminate him immediately and remove him from the premises. The manager nodded once, without hesitation. Eric's mouth fell open. Wait, you can't just. I can, Malik said quietly, and I have. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Eric could hear the next part. And I'm going to make sure that the next place you apply knows exactly why you're no longer here. Because I will not have someone treating people the way you treated me representing this brand, or anyone else's. Eric's defiance cracked. For a moment, his eyes looked almost desperate. But Malik had already turned away, speaking to the regional manager again. Send a memo to every store. I want a full retraining on customer interaction, effective immediately. The store felt different now, quieter, but charged. Customers pretended to browse, though Malik could feel their eyes on him. The suited store manager ushered Eric toward the back to collect his belongings. The shuffle of footsteps and the soft click of a closing door echoed like a full stop at the end of a sentence. The regional manager stood ready with her pen, waiting for more. Malik didn't rush. He looked around the space, his space, taking in the polished wood floors, the glass cases, the carefully arranged displays. All the beauty in the world, he thought, meant nothing if the welcome at the door was poisoned. Here's what's going to happen, Malik said finally. By Monday, I want every employee retrained, not just on product knowledge, but on human respect. Every customer gets the same treatment, whether they're wearing a suit, a hoodie, or pajamas. And I want reports on each store's compliance within 2 weeks. Yes, sir, the regional manager replied quickly. From the corner of the room, the well-dressed couple who'd been offered champagne earlier quietly set down the bag they were considering buying. They approached Malik cautiously. Excuse me, the man said. We saw what happened. And for what it's worth, we think you handled it exactly right. Malik nodded politely, his voice warm but steady. It's not about handling it right. It's about making sure it doesn't need handling at all. Malik stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, the automatic doors closing softly behind him. For a moment, he stood still, letting the quiet outside wash away the tension that had filled the store. Then he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact labeled simply, Corporate HR, Direct. He hit call. A voice answered on the second ring. Mr. Thompson, how can I help you? I just left the downtown location, Malik said evenly. I want a note added to the internal hiring system regarding an employee named Eric Matthews. Terminated today for discriminatory behavior toward a customer. Make sure it's flagged in every region so there's no chance he gets rehired in any of our brands. Understood, the HR director replied. Do you want this flagged with our partner companies as well? Yes, Malik said without hesitation. Every partner, every subsidiary. This isn't someone who should be serving the public anywhere under our umbrella. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. A passerby recognized him, eyes widening. Hey, you're Malik Thompson, right? The CEO? Malik gave a small smile. Some days, he said. Other days, I'm just a customer. The man chuckled, not realizing how much weight those words carried. Malik walked toward the parking garage, the sound of his footsteps echoing against the concrete walls. The tension in his shoulders had eased, but his mind was still turning. He thought about the first store he ever opened, a cramped little space in a half-empty strip mall. Back then, he had one rule for every new hire. Treat the customer in front of you like they're the most important person you'll meet today. It wasn't about sales numbers. It was about dignity. Somewhere between that strip mall and the national headlines, he'd known the risk, that the culture could slip, that the brand could attract people who valued price tags over people. Today had been proof. It would have been easy to just fire Eric quietly and move on. But Malik knew quiet firings didn't fix cultures. They only hid the cracks until they split wider. He unlocked his car and sat for a moment, looking out at the street. Somewhere, he thought, there's a kid walking into a store dressed just like I was today. And maybe that kid has the money to buy the whole display. But more importantly, Maybe that kid just deserves to be treated like they belong. That was the why, and it wasn't negotiable. By the time Malik reached headquarters, the sun was beginning to dip, casting a warm gold across the glass facade of the building. He walked straight past reception and into the executive conference room, where a few department heads were still lingering over late afternoon work. "Close the door," Malik said. The tone in his voice made them move quickly. He stood at the head of the table, resting both hands on the polished wood. "What happened at the downtown store today is not going to happen again. Not in this company. Not in any store that has our name on the door." The heads of HR, operations, and training exchanged glances. Malik continued, "Effective immediately, we're overhauling our customer service training program. I want a new module built around unconscious bias, inclusivity, and respect, mandatory for every employee, from part-time cashier to senior VP. And I want it rolled out company-wide within 30 days. The training director started to speak, but Malik cut in. "And make no mistake, this is not just a box to tick. Compliance will be audited. Stores that fail to meet the standard will see leadership changes." He let the weight of that settle. "We sell luxury goods, but our real currency is trust. If we lose that, we're finished." Around the table, there were no objections, only quiet nods. They could feel the urgency in his voice. Later that night, Malik sat alone in his office, the city skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The conference room orders had already set a ripple in motion, emails going out to every regional manager, calendars filling with urgent training sessions. But Malik knew policies alone wouldn't save a company's soul. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It was from the opening day of his very first store, him standing beside the entrance, grinning in a borrowed suit 2 sizes too big, shaking hands with his very first customer. He remembered exactly what he'd told the teenager working the register that day. Treat every person who walks in like their family. Somewhere along the line, that simple truth had been buried under sales quotas and quarterly reports. Today had been a reminder, sharp, unwelcome, but necessary, that it needed to be dug back up. Malik placed the photo on his desk, propping it against his monitor where he would see it every morning. The phone on his desk buzzed with a new message from the regional manager he'd met earlier. "Training scheduled. Staff briefed. Downtown store understands the standard now." Malik typed back a short reply. "Good. Make sure they remember it tomorrow." He leaned back in his chair, looking out at the city lights. The work ahead would be constant. The vigilance, endless. But for Malik, that was the point. Respect wasn't a slogan, it was a daily decision. And as long as his name was on the door, it would never be optional. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.